Hello, Guru Fateh. Welcome to the Sickcast. My name is Manpreet Singh. Thank you for joining us. We have a special podcast today. We're trying something new. We're trying to give you video and audio. And we want to talk about what's on every Sikh's mind, every Punjabi's mind, the world's mind. And I know Narendra Modi's mind is the farmer protest happening. And with me, I have Harinder Singh. Harinder Singh, Guru Fateh. Welcome. Good to see you.
Guru Fateh, man, how are you?
Good, man. Last time we talked about the farmer issues, it was the beginning of October 2nd. And we talked about what's happening, what are the laws. Now I think the whole diaspora knows what these laws are and what's happening. But from October 2nd to now, middle of December, what has changed? What's your view? What's your perspective on what's happening with the farmer protests?
Yeah, so it started out that people were focused on the three farm bills. The focus is very much there, but this movement, if I can globalize it for a second, this is really about the global south, as they call it in the world, where, if you take out the richest countries and the richest corporations, whatever is left in the Asia, Africa, Americas, this movement now, which has 500 plus unions, about 50 of them from Punjab, is gone on the world map that this is the largest protest by the unions ever in the history of the world. So it has gone from being about three farm bills, which is very much about the farmers still, but to the larger issue of haves and have-nots, corporations versus unions, the global south versus the rich, as well as about this idea of within India, what are the real anti-national policies of India, which means what are the policies against the people of India? What do the 1.3 billion people in India really needs? And who are the 0.1 percenters who are controlling these in the garbs of democracies, privatizations, and doing benefit for the public, whereas this is really about public revolting and creating solidarities with not just with farmers, but everyone who is affected by the agriculture economy, which is 50 to 80% of the people in India. And then creating solidarities with not just Punjabis, but now also Haryanas, now also Rajasthan's, parts of Uttar Pradesh. This has actually gone what they call pan-Indian. And from pan-Indian, it has gone global.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned Haryana because I'm all over Twitter, and this is what the world is talking to. The Sikh Twitter is talking about it, at least Punjabi Twitter and stuff. And Gurpreet Guggi, famous actor, comedian, and everything, he says at least Modi did one good thing. He brought Punjab and Haryana back together.
Well, many are saying that. In fact, but this we shouldn't be surprised by. Look, the Punjabi psyche, which large part of it is Sikh psyche, has always been about this. We are able to consolidate and come together when we have an external attack. This is an attack on every Punjabi's economy, every Punjabi's home, as they have been calling it, or existence. So many people have said this, but this has happened in our history throughout. We have always been able to consolidate when we are able to externalize the external attacks, when we've been able to understand those. Where we have been struggling with is when the attacks have been internal or not as physical or concrete.
Yeah, I mean, so I've seen documentaries on YouTube on the farmer protests, and I'm looking at it, and I was even looking at it last night. I think I might be pronouncing it wrong, but Lalantop, I think, or something like that. What a beautiful documentary. And just seeing the farmers are so united, but the farmers they're united in their message, but just seeing how they all love each other, they're here to stay. And I actually love it. I was so proud. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy just seeing them. And the perspective there, it was emotional. It was very emotional. And, basically Buzurg, people that I would call, Bauji Biji type people, they're there. And they're saying, and I love their stance, they're saying either we will be here and die, basically, or Modi will take back the laws. So
right.
They're here. They're clear on what they need to accomplish.
So that document you reference is a good example of how a Hindi-speaking documentary makers came together to present what really is the narrative of this movement. And they did a superb job because they actually brought in the whole Punjabi Sikh element, which is leading this movement, but they created a very good sort of a bringing together how the Haryanvis have been major part of it, and how the old and the young are coming together, and they are very much here to stay. So this is not just statements or sloganeering, which is what most protest movements are. And this is definitely not what politicians are used to, where somebody does it for 1 or 2 or maybe a couple of days. People are here as if they have come here for months. So, in a farming psyche, this is about until the next harvest. So they're prepared to be here at least till April. And they've been saying this, कि 6 महीने लेदा सी अनाज नाल लेके आए हैं. We have enough food.
Yeah.
The anna or the grains which we have been providing to the world, we have enough for ourselves, and we will use enough of this if we have to stay here for months, maybe up to April.
Yeah, it's I mean, remarkable, and it's credible. And I want to, you mentioned I want to, because this became a government thing, a Bollywood thing, where they're just ranking on it, and I read on Twitter, I love Twitter because of this. So I want to talk about social media impact, which I'll get to, but I want to talk about the Langar element, because some people have said, this is not a Sikh movement, this is not a Punjab movement, this is a people's movement, things like that. Langar is Sikh movement, and one of the Twitter responses I like, where is this funding coming from? And one person wrote, the 20 rupees invested by Guru Nanak on Langar, the interest is lasting till eternity. And it's still going on. I read this and I'm like, this is beautiful. This is what it's all about. And they are here. But the government's getting mad. We're getting games played. Pizza Langar. People are getting mad at Pizza Langar. We're gonna, Punjabis go, farmers go, Sikhs go. They try to find Anand everywhere. This is what the government's trying to do. Play these little games with us. Khalsa Aid with the foot massages for the Buzurg. I didn't see youngsters in those pictures. It's for the Buzurg. So it's like these government games, they're trying to get us, but they haven't gotten us. And it's amazing to see.
Well, yeah, so one thing is these games are always there, whether it's a movement or not, right? Punjabi ਚ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਨਾ ਸ਼ੁਗਲ ਮੇਲਾ ਤਾਂ ਚੱਲਦਾ ਹੀ ਹੁੰਦਾ. And ਸਾਨੂੰ ਉਹਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਬੜੀ ਪ੍ਰਵਾਹ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦੀ. We should not worry too much about it, but there are enough people who are now countering it, because finally the Punjabi Sikh celebrities have joined the Twitter and they're active on it. And so are many Punjabis and Sikhs and also farmers. So look, there are a couple of things here. First thing is, this is very much a Sikh movement. This is very much a Punjabi movement. And this is very much a farmer movement. Why do we need to say this is only one of them? In fact, I went on to say this is a pan-Indian movement. And then in solidarity with the global South, this is actually the largest movement in terms of fighting for the have-nots rights in this corporate globalized structures. This is a very, 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 very big deal. So we don't need to say this is only one element is the only part of the movement. All those are parts of these movements. So what you see on the Langar part, which you came on, look, have the Langars have been there before Guru Nanak? Sure, elements of those have always been in the society, because man's gotta eat, women's gotta eat. We've always been, from the time of we were hunter-gatherers to the time where we are now, we've always had a need to eat. What Guru Nanak did was making it part of social justice and ethics. And when he did that investment of 20 rupees, you put 4% inflation and the adjustments from the gold available of, at the time of the Guru Nanak period. I did this calculation last year for Guru Nanak Pasha's anniversary when we were doing exhibitions all over the globe. And that number becomes something like $300,000. So when you have that level of investments, and it's not just investment, but the number tells us one story. The other is the barakat. This whole idea of how when we say generosity overpowers everything. So people give different things. Look, at the time of Guru Arjan Sahib, there were time when people, there was Langar was almost must, which means not much was available. People were living, and we have heard stories where in jails, Sikhs were in the jails and they will announce, even if they have a roti, that, Langar is ready, anyone who wants to have it. From that to very opulent langars, which happened in the Darbar of the Guru as well. Sometimes the kheer was served, and sometimes you serve other things. This is where, don't get distracted by what people who are trying to derail or sabotage the messaging. People do what they do out of their generosities. People give, and this idea of langar, I want to connect, which is what you asked earlier. Langar was shabads in a house of Guru Nanak, which means thoughtfulness was part of it. So thoughtfulness is being applied, and langars of physical nature, in addition to fighting with thoughtfulness are now coming into play. And the only request I will make is people who are listening, if you want to help out, I've been getting phone calls, emails, and texts. Where can we send money? How can we help out? And I've been saying, look, people on the ground are saying, don't send any money. So if you really want to help out in a physical capacity of a langar, what people really need are mostly at the Tikri border. So see, the Singhu border place where the people have gathered for these protests have enough of the materials. If you want to help out, at Singhu border, they got all sorts of things. But at Tikri border, they don't even have enough rajais. They don't even have anything, enough food even in some cases. So I think it'll be good if people are looking to help out, provide where seva is needed, and the app seva would be provide what they needed.
Well, we mentioned this, but what do you think about? I'm impressed with the hero, and he is the biggest star in Punjabi world, Diljit Dosanjh, biggest star in Punjabi world. I was very impressed with a bunch of Punjabi singers, but I was very impressed with the biggest one right now that we have, Diljit, coming there, donating money, donating his time, saying things. He's definitely on Twitter. And he's definitely lashing out on people and the Bollywood stars and stuff like that. I mean, it's great to see. I don't think I would ever see this. I couldn't even imagine me seeing this, but I love his responses. And they come from a Punjabi place. They come from a Sikh place. But what do you think about singers like that, but also sportsmen and big time names and celebrities in the community returning awards? Does this have impact, or is it more... is it more like a philosophical thing? Is it more like a message being delivered? Like, what is this?
Well, this is solidarity. So let's start with Diljit, Loka Dil Jit Raha Hai, absolutely, because this is the first time in the history of Punjabi Sikh celebrities, somebody has gone on to take political positions. Now, many have joined, but his is a different level. And this is not the first time he has done it. He did it a year before. He did a year before that. He's the one individual at the Bollywood level who has figured out how to navigate his Sikhi, how to navigate his Punjabiness, and how to navigate his stardom, which is in the world of show business, as we call it, right? So I think he definitely deserves kudos, regardless of what we might think of his songs or his movies. He definitely has been carrying this, and he has figured out, the contrast for his Sunny Deol. So you go figure. We have another Bollywood star who was the biggest one in 80s and 90s. You have another one who claims to be a Punjabi Sikh descent and heritage, who's Akshay Kumar, and now you have this. So the guy who brought turban to Bollywood, where otherwise that was not available other than certain scenes, and the guy who has figured out how to entertain people at the same time, figure out a way to bring Punjab and Sikh issues which matter the most, he definitely deserves a lot of credit. Now, many singers have joined, kudos. When singers join, when sportsmen join, when celebrities join, when poets are returning their awards, when economists are talking about this and returning their awards, what is this showing? This is showing that this solidarity starts from this idea of Punjabi Sikh agrarian society. So when agrarian society, everyone is connected. Even, look, let me put it this way. If one Punjabi is affected directly, every Punjabi is indirectly affected by this. This is why you are seeing this outpouring vocal support, visible support, and now what is being called the United Colors of Punjab. And the celebrities of Punjab, the intellectuals of Punjab, even the political leadership, which I'm glad they are not getting much of the time, because they haven't done much about Punjab in last 30, 40, 50 years. But even then, all of that consolidation is coming together, which means this is a very solid, very powerful, very unique movement, which is beyond farmers. This is really about defining the next Punjab and the next India.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Speaking about the next Punjab, speaking about I would say, India media, or Godi media, as they call it everywhere, as a code name for what's happening, is the Khalistan word. And so Khalistan's being invoked, Tankwadi, terrorists, all this stuff. People are hip to it, though. People are hip to it, at least on the ground. As much as I've seen, as much as interviewed and seen, it was it was just it's not a boogeyman word anymore. I saw somebody from, I can't remember, it was Rajasthan or something like that. He's like, if they're fighting for the rights of farmers, this, that, and they're Khalistanis, then I'm a Khalistani too. I never thought I would see that. What is this Khalistan play? Because they're trying to invoke things in people. Obviously, we're hip to it. We're okay with it. But what is this Khalistan play? What is the government trying to do here?
Well, they were trying, but they have failed. And obviously, what they tried was, and these are the every government tries this, so Indian government is also trying it. And what it is you try to say that these are somehow misled people. They're the separatists. They are the ones who want to create quote unquote terror or militancy. And then they tried the similar label that these were the the Naxalite movement people. And then they tried the Tukde Tukde gang people. And what is very interesting thing is that it is not just the Punjabis and Sikhs who are responding to it. The Rajasthanis are responding to it. Some of the people from the left are responding to it. Some of the even mainstream correspondents who are actually the major anti-establishment Hindi reporters are responding to it, like Ravish Kumar. So my point in mentioning this is an age-old tactic which has been tried with Punjabs and Sikhs in the age when the government controlled all the media. Yes, government still controls the major mainstream media, but the social media and some of the alternative media, they do not control, and people have accesses to that. And because of that, they are not able to successfully use the word Khalistan to derail the movement. They are trying other things now. But point here is this, on the word Khalistan, the efforts still continue. Only this last week, Indian ambassadors group to Canada circulated an open letter, again invoking the word Khalistan in the Canadian government interference. So they keep doing this wherever there are larger diasporas, where in UK, in Canada, sometimes in US, but Australia and Germany. And recently, I think yesterday, there was a coverage, a news report that they will be cracking down on the funding from the Sikh sources to the movement and other things. So these things have been done against Christians earlier in the country. They have been done against Muslims in the country. And I think now Sikhs and the Punjab might be at the receiving end of it. But here is the point. The point is they're not able to create the negative image of the word Khalistan, which earlier governments, including Congress, was able to do. So right now, the word Khalistan is not really even a bogeyman anymore. It actually has become a word. I heard a BBC interview, and I should mention this. They asked the lady, what do you think of all these Sardars here? And her response was so great. She's like, I feel, and I'm now dreaming, why am I not living in Punjab? These are such good people. They're taking care of the movement. They're taking care of us. They look at us with a very respectful eye. Why wouldn't I want to call them Sardarji? This respect of being called Sardarji again by the Hindi speaking world in the post 84 had completely diminished. So it has taken 36 years, that this image, which was pre-84 image of Sardarji, this honorific thing, this respectable thing. Why? Because we are the original Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan. When Lal Bahadur Shastri, one of the prime ministers of India, early India's, when he said that, it's the Sikhs. It's the Punjabis. We were the one fighting on the border. We were the one doing the farming. So Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan is codified for Sikhs and Punjab. We are it, and people are seeing it. And now they're appreciating it because they're able to see it in front of them rather than a propaganda through only the government channels.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, one of the images went viral where they had Guru Nanak holding a farming tool and looking up. So yeah, I hear you. I want to get to the social media element of this too. But even before I do that, one tweet that was like going all over the place was, I don't know if you know this guy, Kaushik Basu. He is professor of economics, Cornell University, and former chief economist of the World Bank. Okay, so he had a tweet saying, let me just read it. I have now studied India's new farm bills and realized they are flawed and will be detrimental to farmers. Our agriculture regulation needs change, but the new laws will end up serving corporate interests more than farmers. Hats off to the sensibility and the moral strength of India's farmers. Now, this guy, who's Cornell University, chief economist of the world, saying, hey, the farm bills are not good for you. This is great what you're doing. So if he's on this page, Where are the economists of India? Where are they? Where are
Oh,
they?
they're
Are they
very
going?
much there as well. You have to
Okay.
realize that what just Koshak was just said now, this is what an leaders of the regular farmer jathas have been saying. You see, when
Hmm.
you listen to even people like Lakha Siddhana, that's what he's been saying. You
Hmm.
know, when then you look at people who are showing now South Asian solidarities, and when they're holding conversations, whether it's the Oxford South Asian Society or the Stanford South Asian Society, they're saying the same thing. That look, we can talk about the nuancing of the laws and you can get caught up into it. And this is what Rangana Connaught is trying to do to Diljit. And he very carefully is answering them. Don't tell me about one element of the law. There is the intent of the law and there is the impact of the law. The impact of the law is so clear to everyone. So clear. Whether they can debate about the legal elements of it or not, whether they can debate about a particular clause of it or not. But the impact is very clear. And that impact Kisan unions understand very well. That impact the Punjabi Sikh Andolans or the Kisan Morchas understand very well. And this is the winning part. And when the intellectuals say that we have also studied it, and they are absolutely right, people who are protesting, this is where it is becoming next to impossible for government and its agencies to now figure out what to do. Because this is not just about the unpaired farmer. Earlier they would say these
Yeah.
illiterate farmers, but now you got they're speaking English, so they're like, oh, they speak English as well, as if we don't learn English, right? So this is now the union leader yesterday gave a BBC interview. One of the young union leaders gave interview in English to BBC, and they're like, oh, he speaks English. So what has happened is you don't have articulators, or what earlier I used to call intercolators, who spoke on behalf of the people, but they were never of the people. They were
Hmm.
actually the middleman between the government. And now, even if one or two become intercolators of the 500, their voices are not getting amplified. When you have Rupi Kaurs of the world writing an editorial in the Washington Post, they're speaking to one stream of consciousness of Punjabi Sikh diaspora who is also a feminist. Then you have people writing within the Indian systems, right? You have celebrities singing about it. Hundreds of Punjabi Sikh songs have come out, and where do they all unite? That this actually is about the Punjab and the center, or this actually is about the wrongs which center has done to the farmers or the Punjabs or the Sikhs. So moti gal, the major impact gal is very clear to everyone, regardless of whether they're doing rally in Vancouver or in London or in Melbourne or anywhere within those 5 borders and within those on the Singhu as well as on Tirdi.
Yeah, seeing the rallies all over the world, it
Awesome.
just makes it's like, wow, everyone's doing rallies, everyone's for it, everybody knows. And this is hard to ignore. If you're an Indian politician who wrote these laws, this is hard to ignore. And so I want to touch on the social media element because this element is very new. This element was not there in 84. Because my dad, because now my dad's hooked and all, he and my mom, all they'll have is videos from WhatsApp, Facebook, always have news on just to see what's happening with the farmers. And my dad, a couple of days ago, or I don't know, a week ago, saying, "Oh, Manpreet, I think military ne aaj te o churasi wala, na hove this that." I told Dad, I'm like, it's hard to do now because there's cameras everywhere. He's like, internet band karne. I'm like, oh, they'll take it on their phone and record it. I mean, there's cameras everywhere. There's Twitter everywhere. There's like real news, real time reporters on the ground everywhere. The world is watching now. So the social media impact, I think this is a big impact it's had on the move. If there wasn't social media, if we still had like 5 news channels back than we did in the 80s, this would be a different movement.
We
What do you
had
think?
one channel, it was controlled by government in 1984. We had one radio station, which was government controlled and run by the government of India. So look, you're absolutely right. The saving grace in all of this actually is the social media. And within social media, you have veins of things. So even, everyone is editor now, right? So when you have differentiation and minor differentiation in the narratives, that is the reality. Let's live with it, which is different and more valuable than the one monolith which a government keeps saying through its own intercolators and its own media channels. And just so, it's very important why government does it and social media difference. Look, there's a report out from Europe. It's so clear that ANI is not a news agency. People like me have been saying this for more than a year, that ANI is not a news agency like Reuters in India. It's actually a mouthpiece of the government. And then they have shown that how people like Shrivastava Group have been running the stories in the sort of a garb of think tanks and in the garb of televisions and radio stations all over the diaspora to propagate the ideas of the government. Now you have a counter elements. You have people like Aman Bali doing podcasts and giving you daily reports about what were the meetings. You have union leaders themselves doing telecasts. In fact, as of yesterday, they have their own Twitter channel, YouTube channel, Facebook channel. So you can listen to that. You can listen to what Deep Sidhu has to say. You can listen to what Ugraha have to say. You can listen to what Lakha Sedana have to say. You can listen to what Rajawal has to say. So what is going on now is you have incredible amount of information which is flowing, and only thing which we already have to do is what government is saying and what these 500 plus unions with their larger support of the farmers and the people who are supporting the farmers for Punjab are saying. All that is coming on social media. That said, it is a grave reminder to all of us that governments which are run by strongmen globally do many things which are unexpected and uncalled for. Look at the case of Russia. I mean, look today, even, by the time people are listening to it, you will know what just happened. There was a poisoning done to the protest anti-government individual in Russia. Look at what happened during Arab Springs and at Tahrir Square. Look, social media is great, but the strongman politics, which believes in this populism, nationalism, they are able to do many things to suppress the movements. So we must always be vigilant. We must always be prepared. And especially I say to Sikhs, and I was saying this privately, but now I'm saying publicly, remember the emergency of 1975 to 77. Indira Gandhi never forgot that because it was the Akali Morchas who were against her in the organized form. And look, there was a 84 which happened, 7 to 8 years later, which she planned for 5 years later. Strong men and women don't forget these things. Will Modi forget this? Hopefully, the right advisors, I'm really hoping, will get through him that instead of creating, and sending 2 crore emails to people about propaganda with the Sikhs, can you get together with his Sikh advisors and tell him, look, don't do the stupid mistakes like what Indira Gandhi did. I'm really hoping that people like Mr. Puri, who is in this cabinet, or his former Indian ambassador like Mr. Sarna are able to get to them, that don't just collect the pensions of the Indian government. Do give them the right advice for not just the sake of Sikhs and Punjab, give them the right advice for the sake of Indians at large, and which is 1.2 billion people. That's what's at stake right now.
Yeah, speaking of strong, man, I mean, that's there's a lot at stake. There's a lot at stake. But what are you trying to say? India is not the world's largest democracy? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying this. If you look at the ratings by reporters around the world, when they do look at the ratings of Transparency International, look at the ratings of Freedom House, they do not put India as a regular democracy. There are lots of challenges with that democracy. Just like there are challenges, like America is having a constitutional crisis right now, right? Depending on what happens. But that's an anomaly in America. In India, that's not an anomaly. Those kind of challenges do happen. So because India does not have enough liberal institutions, it is called an illiberal democracy. I'm trying not to be academic about it, but what I'm trying to say is, look, you can argue about whether India is a democracy or not. What is not arguable is when people do study is they call it illiberal democracy, which means it does operate and look and feel like a democracy, but it does not have strong institutions to make sure the democratic values and reforms and systems are there to make sure non-democratic and unconstitutional things do not happen. And what has been going on for last few years, especially last year and this year, there are many trends from what has happened at Supreme Court of India to the kind of other sort of acts which have been passed regarding what happened in Jammu and Kashmir, regarding other acts which have to do with the citizenship. There are illiberal systems which have been brought onto public. In that context, I say we do need people who are even within the government. We need the right advisors that even in this Hindutva government, there are things, people like Subramaniam Swamy, he actually came on record yesterday and said, look, I really want government, and he's a right-wing RSS man.
Sure.
And he said this very clearly. We have not done right to the six. This question is not about what six will be doing next. This question is about, can the government of India do the right thing for the six? He is clear. So people like him, even if we disagree with them on 95% of the things, they're trying to at least vocalize, and he did the same thing in 84. They need to be amplified, and hopefully the think tank and the advisors, the home ministry, the MEAs, people who are coming with the policies on what to do with this, they can listen to the voices which are more sane on how to deal with this crisis.
So you have your ear to the ground. You follow Punjab politics very well. You know a lot of people. You know people all over the diaspora. I'm sure you get WhatsApp messages all the time on this is happening, that's happening. Dekho, dekho. So what's happening right now, man? What's you know, everyone sees the news every time. Everyone's seeing all the farmers just sleeping in their tractors, you know, sleeping on the floor. My dad was, I don't know Punjab politics that much, but my dad's like, I don't know, Bittu his name or something like that. They're sleeping on the ground too now and stuff. And my dad never expected that ever to happen. So what's happening? What's your sense on the movement? Let's wind this up a little, but I want to get to this. What's your sense on the movement? Where is it at right now? Where should it go? I asked you this question on the last podcast in October. Where do you see us 6 months from now?
Yeah, so look, the movement is very strong. The movement has Dalit consciousness as part of it, even while realizing that from Punjab it is primarily led by the Jat who are landowners, but people who are the land tillers and who don't own as much land, they are very much part of this consciousness. This is a very big deal, by the way. What is also part of this consciousness is that women are not showing up. You know, it used to be the jathas would go from Akal Takht, where ਇੱਕ ਬੀਬੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਸੀ ਕਿਤੇ ਕਿਤੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਕਿਸੇ ਜੱਥੇ 'ਚ ਹੁਣ 50 ਨਹੀਂ ਤੇ 100 ਨਹੀਂ. If there are 500,000 people, at least 50,000 are women, and they are not just making prashadas, they are also articulating whether she as a lawyer, whether as an academic, or whether as an individual who is part of this larger movement. So the bibiyas are very much that consciousness, the feminine consciousness is very much part of this. That's another good thing. The farmers, the political consciousness is part of it. The Sikh consciousness is part of it. And the beautiful thing is that the old leadership, well, while many people consider is somewhat not trustworthy and has a dubious past, enough of them are in the leadership position that nobody is able to hijack it or manipulate it on their own. Even if they have tried, and there have been some trials like that, which is bound to happen in movements. So we should not get focused on those too much. We should really celebrate that this movement is very organic right now. This movement has legs and hands and hearts and heads, everything it has right now. So what I do see is this government has to make a decision. It is in a very tough place. You know, if it agrees to everything, it has to look at how it will be perceived in the rest of the India and the rest of the demands, because this was a strongman politics. Farmers have been quite united through in their negotiations that there is no sort of a negotiation until the three bills are repealed. So I think some sort of a compromise here will get developed, and that compromise hopefully will go into, I hope to see that there is a MSP being discussed, not for 1 year or 2 years, maybe for 5 years. There is a discussion about what kind of mandis, because the reason this is more about Punjab and Haryana and eventually pan-India, because Punjab and Haryana has a very good mandi system where farmer is able to get something out of it. So some element of allowing flexibilities at a state level, which by the way, Punjab state has already passed sort of a bill saying that they want to do their own thing. The constitutionality of this needs to be looked at as to what a center can do and what a state can do. So I think those nuances is what a very able leadership will be looking at this. And what I'm hoping will come out eventually, whether it is 2 months, whether it is 2 weeks, is that there will be a new leadership coming out. And really, this is the biggest thing. Even if people say it will be such a failure if the three bills are not rejected. Well, yes and no. I think the biggest sort of a success of this is that movement led by everyday people is possible. this has not happened in India since the so-called the partition of India or the freedom of India since 1947. And organic leadership is now coming. So political leaders are also observing what's going on. They're not getting the stages, which is great, by the way, because they have never really delivered for the people. You know, so this
Yep.
whole Malwa versus Majha and Doaba politics is also happening, but everyone observing it. And I'm really hoping the next Punjab leadership will emerge out of this. The next Sikh leadership will also emerge out of it. And we need to create the Punjab and the Sikh, they need to create really next level of alliances with the other downtrodden communities, the next lawyers who are not just capable of dealing with Punjab and Sikh issues, but also at the center in Delhi and Supreme Courts, the larger Indian issues in consolidation with whether it's the farmers' issues or whether it is the prisoners or human rights issues. So all those possibilities are open right now. And I am becoming more and more hopeful that these new leaderships who will understand these nuances and who are able to articulate these things, who are able to carry multiple consciousness with them, will be emerging to make Punjab and Sikh and Indian politics better.
Well, if you're hopeful, I'm hopeful too. So it's a great note to leave everybody on. Harinder, it was great having you. Always great having you talking about this. I'm sure we're going to talk about the farmer protests and what's happening for the months to come. Appreciate your time, man, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Absolutely. And the reminder is that Baba Nanak ne hal bhi baya te majja vi charaiyan ne.
Hmm.
So Baba Nanak did not just sing Bani. Baba Nanak went through the Kirti route. And Kirti is this ethical living and ethical earning route. And this is why in the name of Guru Nanak, it is resonating with everyone in Punjab, among Sikhs, and throughout India and the globe now.
Yeah, for sure. No, thank you for that. Thank you very
Guru
much.
Fateh.
All right, Harinder. Waheguru Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.